Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
The El Paso, Las Cruces communities.
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But we are concerned about troubling and irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these stories simply aren't true without checking facts first. Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 Hello and welcome to this edition of Get Up the Yard. I'm Donegal Thorpe and I'm joined by my fellow nonsense troubleshooters, John and Luxie. Here in this programme, our aim is to troll through the depths of the internet and bring to your attention the pure dross that circulates around the planet as fact. Although there will be some weeks when we bring to your attention the simply downright ridiculous. The three of us have no political agenda. We only believe in deciphering the truth of the right and left or the right and wrong. This week, we're focusing on the mainstream media's attempt to further stigmatise the now infamous red Make America Great Again, or MAGA, hat and declare it racist. Sean, first of all, welcome to the programme. Second of all, well, what are we talking about this week?
Well, we're talking about the Covington Catholic school teen incident, or the MAGA teen as he's known. To set the scene, these Catholic school kids were at a March for Life, which is a anti-abortion, pro-life march that was held in Washington. And so after the march, they were waiting for their bus back home, and they were in the is it the Lincoln Memorial?
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, they were waiting there, and this is a place where there's lots of people protest, and they had a group who are called the Black Hebrew Israelites, who we'll come back to later on. Definitely. They're basically a black nationalist group who are very racist, very homophobic, very sexist, really awful, an awful group. Most people ignore. They're basically like, what's the Phillips family, the infamous family. And
the West
Church. Yeah. That's the one, yeah. But we'll get back to them anyway. But of course, these lads were sort of insulting anyone within proximity to them. And of course, these students were there as well. Now, they were wearing their, as you said, MAGA hats, Make America Great Again hats, which we were going to come back to this, but this is apparently a provocative garment now to wear. And, even this is just supporting your president. This is what it's supposed to mean. You're making America, more competitive, a better place than it has been in the last few years. But anyway, of course, this got the attention of the Black Israelites, who were insulting them, calling them all sorts of names. And anyway, so they started doing their school chant to counteract this abuse they were getting. And this got the attention of another guy who was at the memorial, a guy by the name of Nathan Phillips, who was at another march that day called the Indigenous Peoples March. And he seen that these people were, getting rowdy. And he basically marched into the group with a drum. And from what I gathered, the kids sort of thought he was joining in with them. So they kind of, there's this all on video. Of course, I'm going to link it under the podcast.
Yeah, they allowed him to enter the group.
They welcomed him in because they just thought they assumed he was just joining in, so that was fine. But he went in and he basically approached one particular guy, singled him out more or less, and went straight up to him and started banging the drum pretty much in his face. I mean, like, it's fairly close proximity to the guy's face. I mean, he was inches away from his nose. Now, this kid seemed to just sort of be awestruck of what's going on and didn't know how to react. Maybe he was a shy kid. He just had this guy in his face and didn't know how to react to him. And anyway, this was all filmed. I think eventually the bus came, it fizzled away. They got on the bus, they went home, and this footage was then released on Twitter and social media and what have you. And they cut down to a 30-second clip of this video, which now was, I think, is hours long. A few hours long. Again, I'll link the raw feed so you can see it for yourself. They basically clipped it, it said something like, "This teen confronts an indigenous protester," and basically tried to make out like this guy went up. They actually even phrased it in a way that it said he approached Nathan Phillips, which is clearly the other way around. Anyone who's seen the footage can see that.
It's been the narrative It's been the narrative all week in the news.
That's the narrative, is just this guy confronted this guy. What do you think yourselves, lads? I'm sure you've seen it.
One thing I will say, Sean, is I do think the kid seized on an opportunity to be the centre of attention, because he was well aware of what he was doing. I know the fella came up to him, but he knew his friends would have gotten a laugh by him standing there with a smug smile on his face.
He was in an interview, I think it was NBC. Interview, and he said he didn't know, like, had he have said something, he'd be, interrupting this guy's chant. So it's kind of like, what do you do when someone bangs a drum in your face?
And also, lads, just context.
I'm sure he's saying that. I'm sure he's had time to think about it.
Hold on. Look, hold on a second. You have to remember the kid, by the way, his name is Sandmann. Nick Sandmann, great start. Nick Sandmann. Hopefully that's not a Freudian slip. You have to remember, though, look, he is a 16-year-old kid. First of all, let's just put that into context.
I know he's a 16-year-old child, only, but a 16-year-old child for the most part. And I'm presuming he's gone to a good school as well. If that bus has taken them all the way from Kentucky to Washington DC for a pro-life rally, that school is well funded. Therefore, he's well educated. Anyone. I don't think you even have to be well educated to understand that if someone is in your face, regardless if you're the victim or the perpetrator of it is intimidation. And I do feel what the child should have done was he could have stepped away.
Just listen to what you said there. What the child should have done.
Yeah.
Come on. This is a Native American going with a big fucking drum in a guy's face, like banging it. Like, and so what would you do? The guy just looks awkward. I get, he just looks really awkward.
But what you do to alleviate a situation is you don't aggravate the situation. If let's say you're in a bar, Dunny, and someone tried to push you around, what you should do is you say, look, I will just walk away. You have to remove yourself from the situation. That is a smart thing to do. And I don't think the child is that innocent that he felt that the only thing he could do was stand there as to not insult this gentleman that was banging a drum in his ear. If someone was banging a drum in my ear, you know what I'd do, Dunny? I'd probably walk away. Or else I'd push them away.
Yeah, well, he's waiting on his bus. Where is he going to walk away to?
Well, he could walk away into the crowd.
But that's the thing, where you see him backed up in the video. I mean, look, it's all well and good looking back at what he should have done, what he could have done, what he did, and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's in the moment. It's a 16-year-old. I mean, if I'm in a bar, chances are, I'm going to be over the age of 18 normally. Yeah. That's an adult decision. Yeah, you're saying that now as a man in his 30s, but this is a 16-year-old, and this guy is in his 60s. That's gone up to him.
One thing I definitely don't perceive is that the child is a victim. I don't think he's a victim of circumstance whereby he was in no other position, that the only thing he could do was stand there. And if you look at his demeanor and you look at his posture, The child wasn't intimidated. He was not afraid. He landed an opportunity to make his friends laugh, and that's exactly what transpired. But all of the other stuff that surrounds that event, that surrounds that circumstance, has been completely lost by the media because they've clearly edited the events. And the fact that he was wearing a Make America Great Again hat was another side against Donald Trump. The media definitely have an agenda to perpetrate Donald Trump and elements of his supporters as right-wing nuts who don't tolerate minorities who have a different cultural way of living than a traditional white Christian person would. That's what the media have definitely tried to do. But I definitely don't think that this child is a victim, that he felt scared and that he was worried about.
No, but he
never says he was in that sense. But it's what happened afterwards that I think he was a victim. He was a victim of online abuse. You know, death
absolutely, I agree
with
that.
In that situation, no, but neither was Nathan Phillips, the guy banging the fucking drum manically in his face.
No, definitely not. The way, have you lads ever seen? I'm sure you have. You've seen Bowling for Columbine.
Yes, yeah.
I remember watching. I remember watching that, and I remember being outraged by the NRA. I remember being really pissed off with Charlton Heston, because the nature of that 4-minute clip in Bowling for Columbine would make it seem that the NRA and Charlton Heston were completely insensitive to the events that transpired at Columbine High School. But it wasn't until a few months later that someone told me that was edited. And if you actually watch it,
it's obvious,
it's blatantly obvious. But if there's been a sleight of hand whereby the narrative has made you believe that this is exactly what happened, then you're more likely to believe that's exactly what happened, because I think I definitely do, and I'm still guilty of it, of having an inherent belief in what I'm being told on the news. I still am foolish like I was today. I generally believe that this little kid was being a little shit. And he was trying to impress his friends. And I know that's the problem.
We've always, listen, I mean, we've all found ourselves in a situation where we've been a little shit and we've done something, and we got kick up the arse or bang in the face over it. I have, because I was a kid. This guy's a kid, and you're saying he's not a victim, and I agree with Sean here. He is a victim. I mean, I'll just give an example.
He's a victim now.
Bill Maher,
I don't think you were talking about in the incident. I don't think he was during the incident. It was just some guy banging in his face. It was just the aftermath.
You're a 16-year-old kid.
Absolutely, yeah.
You have a 16-year-old kid, and you got this guy coming up to you, looking at you dead in the eye. Okay. Now remember, 16. Just remember what you were like when you were 16. You know what we were all like when you were 16. And he's banging a drum in his face, and he's got cameras around him. And also in the footage as well, you've got other Native Americans screaming at his friends, like saying, "No, fuck off out of our country, go back to Europe," and all this kind of stuff going on. It's a very weird thing. A 16-year-old, I'm sorry, isn't going to be calculated enough. In my opinion, anyway, they're not going to be calculated thinking, "Oh, this is a great photo opportunity."
No, but Tony, logically, if that child had just walked away, it wouldn't have been a news story. It wouldn't have been absolutely anything. Though.
Child, look, that's my point. He's a child.
I think. Did you ever hear of your fight or flight response?
Yeah.
He was just frozen because he's like, I don't know what to do. There's no correct way to respond to that. There's no, you should do this, you should do that. He happened to just stand there looking at this fucking Egypt banging in his face. That's the incident that happened as far as I see it.
That is it.
But the thing is, regardless of what he did, whether he walked away, whether he stood still, either one is the correct response for that person, right? That's either you do that or you do this. What he did was he stood there. They represented this as him confronting this Native American guy.
Racist.
Yeah, and they called him a racist. They called him white supremacist.
This kid's life is ruined, in my opinion, because he will always have a stigma. I just want to read out one of...
That's not Dunny, don't worry. There'll be more than enough people in America that will view him as a hero.
Yeah, but maybe he wanted... I know what you're saying, but now it's like he's been thrown into a side. Some of us don't want to be pigeonholed onto the side.
Well, Dunny, if you're walking around Washington D.C. with a "Make America Great Again,"
fair point.
I think your affiliation is very much defined and it's very clear.
Fair point.
You're placing yourself into a box by doing that.
He is 16. Okay, remember that. I mean, that's what we have to remember here. He's 16, and I know we spoke about it in person before, that with social media and stuff like that, we're giving the youth of today empowerment, more power, more say. And I think we can agree that's not necessarily a good thing, because let's be honest, you don't really figure things out until you're in your mid to late 20s, when you go, do you know what, I get it now. When you give these guys, as I said, he's 16, and I just want to read out just one comment here. I know we got a few comments to read out about the incident, but
the wisdom is about to unfold, isn't it, Donny?
You guys are familiar with a fella on telly in America, Bill Maher.
I know he is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he goes on to he says about the kid. He goes, I'm just reading an article here. He goes, left-wing HBO host Bill Maher launched a vicious attack on the young lad and basically called him a little prick. Little prick. He elaborates, I don't blame the kid, the smirk face kid. I blame lead poisoning and bad parenting, and I blame the fucking kid. What a little prick, smirk face. Like, that's not a dick move to stick your face in this elderly man's face. Now, I think that's that's a grown man, Bill Maher. He's a celebrity of sorts somehow. And he's telling people this kid is he's a little prick. He's smirking this guy's face. I think it's just a kid who, it's not passive aggressiveness. I think it's a kid that's actually just in a very awkward situation, not really knowing what's going on. Why is this large man with about 4 teeth in his head, banging a drum in my face? And I'm not saying it to insult Phillips. It's just, it's a scary visual for a kid, because...
And there's also, have you ever heard of a fear grimace? It's what you do if you're afraid of... No, I'm not saying he's afraid. I'm not saying this is what it is. But you can look like you're smirking if you're actually unsure and uncertain of your surroundings, or are you in danger? Is this guy going to attack me? You might look like a smirk, but it might be actually a form of, uncertainty,
I think so, yeah. It's a kid. But, I mean, okay. There was an article... we'll probably have to agree to disagree.
Well, I think whatever we agree on, if it was a smirk, whatever happened, I think it's what happened afterwards is where how it was presented.
That's what we're going to talk about now.
And the narrative, I think, is dangerous as well. But it's something that it's not going to end, though, Donny. They're always going to find an event. And they're always going to portray it in a certain way that feeds into their objective, which is we will use every single opportunity to discredit the other side, because America has been clearly defined into 2 teams. It's a team game politics. You're either right, you're left, you're conservative, or you're completely liberal. There's no room for being independent. And if you're classified as being independent, you're basically classified as being
a lunatic.
No, a pussy that can't have an opinion.
Well, yeah, I've always noticed that with American telly when I've watched it. Either your name has an or if you're a politician of sorts, you'll have an or beside it, or a D beside it, or if you're a celebrity, it's left wing or right wing, or there's always like a side to it, which yet again I think is unfortunate and not really the way to go about things. But what I'm obviously, this all stemmed because of the Black Judea movement. I believe, is that what they call it, Sean? The Black
Hebrew Israelites.
Black Hebrew Israelites.
Sorry, Hebrew Israelites. They were shouting. I saw the video. Then they were calling Donald Trump a faggot and all this kind of stuff.
But they were calling the kids faggots as well.
Yeah, they were mocking. They were spewing this hatred. But obviously, that's what the kids were responding to with their chant, with their singing, and all that. And then that's when Phillips decided to go in with his large drum. What for me is worrying is that there's very little mention of these guys, because...
Well, can I read you a quote about the first thing they said about the Black Hebrew Israelites?
Go ahead.
The woman, the famous report, she said, 4 African-American young men preaching about the Bible and oppression. That's how she described them.
Oh, really?
That's exactly the quote how she described it.
Wow.
These are calling people faggots, called people niggers, called people anything they could fucking think of. And that's how they're described by CNN.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
But the reality is, in America, you're not allowed to refer to someone of Afro-migration descent as being racist. Otherwise, you are deemed to be racist, because... Black people in America have been oppressed for hundreds of years, and they're allowed to air their thoughts freely. We, as white people, we have white privilege. we're in a privileged position, therefore we cannot look down on someone else for giving their opinion. Basically, black people aren't allowed to be construed to being racist.
Which is actually a form of racism, because it means you've soft bigotry. It means you're not expecting the same reaction from black people as you do from white people.
So in America, basically, 4 lads shouting out, calling, racially abusing white people, homophobic chants, having a go at the Native Americans, slagging them as to how they lost their land and why they lost land, etc., etc., etc. They're okay, but a young lad with a Native American banging a drum in his face because he's wearing a red hat. Because he's wearing a red hat is deemed a racist and a white supremacist. That's basically it.
Yeah. But there is a small bit of rationale behind that, Donny. When Donald Trump was campaigning to be president of America, there were certain groups that Donald Trump felt that he needed to pander to in the most politically correct way in order to gain votes. And some of those groups are clearly white supremacists. They're clearly people who feel
not
that
denying that.
Yeah, and it's a mistake that he definitely made. Therefore, people intertwined racial politics with all politics that pertain to Donald Trump, which is a fallacy and it's incorrect.
But to be fair, anybody going for the presidency, they try to pick a group and cling to them. John Kerry, because everyone thought he was an Irish American, went after the Irish vote and basically tried to get the Irish when he was running for presidency against I think it was George Bush. And actually turns out that his father was actually from Germany and picked the name Kerry because he thought it was an English name and went to America. So the gig was up there. Well, I mean, every president does that, okay?
I'm not saying that as a slight against Donald Trump. They all do it. They all need a base upon which they can get votes from, and they will target certain demographics. They all do it. Donald Trump did do that, and he was caught out for doing it. And the way he went about it was blatantly obvious. It was a mistake. I think it's always a mistake to identify with any type of group that discriminates on the basis of color, gender, religion, or any type of discrimination.
Not the presidency, though.
And he did do that. And the left jumped on it. They jumped on it hard. They tried to portray Donald Trump as a racist. Donald Trump is not a racist. There is no evidence to suggest that he is a racist. There is definite evidence to suggest that he did associate and he did consort with known racists. Does that make him a racist? No. It was obvious what he was trying to do.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the majority. Actually, just discuss Donald Trump a little bit more. Did you see? It was on the BBC last year. Ed Balls, I think he's one of your favourite politicians, Donny. He was in the south of America, and he did a little tour around the Bible Belt, which is traditionally Republican and was traditionally evangelical, very proud to be Christians, and they predominantly vote for Republicans. And our perception in Europe has always been that if you are from the South, you will always vote Republican. If you are from the South, you are conservative. If you are from the South, you will lean more to certain ideologies that are discriminatory, and the promotion of a white Christian is your primary objective. And he asked him, and every state he went to, every village that he was in, the one question he always asked him is, why did you vote for Donald Trump? And the perception, as I said, is here because he's white, he's Christian, or claims to be Christian. That's why we're voting for him. And that actually wasn't the answer. The reason why they voted for him was a one vote. It was a one vote reason. It was either employment, it was immigration, it was crime. That's why they voted for Donald Trump. It wasn't amalgamation of all of these different facets as to why we've been told why someone has voted for Donald Trump. It was actually a one vote policy. So people from the South, they aren't actually in love with Donald Trump. They were completely disgusted by what Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton were going to continue to do in America. That's why they voted for Donald Trump. They didn't vote for Donald Trump because they're racist themselves.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the whole thing. I just want to go back to the MAGA hat, the red "Make America Great Again" hat. I mean, that is just, he's basically, and this is what I took from it. He's basically saying, look, we used to be a world power. They still are a world power, but they used to be the world power. We know China's coming up with cheap labor. India, Russia, they're doing their thing, and Europe is doing their thing. And here we are, and we've got, we don't make anything really anymore. And, he wants to bring industry back to America. And instead of, American companies going to around the world and, to Central America and South America, and cheap labor, he wants to bring those jobs back to the United States. I think that's what I got. Is that, look, we're going to make ourselves number one. We're going to quit looking after, bailing these other countries out and dealing with this. We're going to make America number one again, which obviously is selfish. But to be fair, if you're an American, you're going to, it's the same in any country, isn't it? It's like, let's look after our own first. I think that's really what it was. But obviously, yeah, you're right. The left completely jumped on it. And there were racial connotations as well, because, he's talking about building a big wall to keep the Mexicans out and all that.
Well, illegal immigrants,
yeah, and I've got cousins in America who are like...
Yeah, but he specifically, I think he specifically referred to Mexicans as being the main threat to American security, as opposed to saying illegal immigrants. When you denote a certain nationality or a certain subgroup of people as being a threat,
they come through the Mexican border. Yeah.
Oh no, they are illegal immigrants. They are, but I think he was saying if you are Mexican, you are an illegal immigrant, and that was a massive mistake on his part.
I don't think. Yeah. I don't think that's because he's pro-immigration. He's just anti-illegal immigration. The problem is people conflate the two. When they just say immigration, they seem to talk about illegal and illegal immigration, where they're two completely different things. And there's a lot of legal immigrants from Mexico, from anywhere in America, who don't like legal immigrants, and they're giving them yeah.
Oh yeah, I do agree with that. It's a real problem,
and not to mention the people trafficking.
I just want to talk about the hat though again, right? So I think we're all in agreement that the Make America Well, actually, no, Luxie. I mean, do you think the Make America Great Again hat is racist?
No, absolutely not. So I definitely don't. I think Make America Great Again is a symbol of the Republican right. That's all.
Ronald Reagan used the same slogan.
Yeah, no, but the thing is, all presidents do, though. All presidents want to promote the supremacy of America in the world. Some are a little bit more delicate in the way they portray their ambitions for America to be. Donald Trump has been very direct and very forthright in his image of America. Does that make him racist? No. Does that make the hat racist? No.
It just makes it pro-America.
It just makes it pro-America, and I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so
I don't see an issue with that whatsoever. And if you have an issue with that, get a life.
So I did. So Alyssa Milano, if you're listening, so basically we're all in agreement that what Alyssa Milano texted. First of all, she said the incident brought her to tears. This whole thing, and also that the "Make America Great Again" hat is comparable to a white hood.
Outrageous thing to say.
It is outrageous, yeah.
But that's what we're dealing with, and I know she's a liberal activist about this whole thing. I mean, that's what they are. There is a campaign, obviously. I mean, and I want to talk about the left-wing media. So we've established. So that's what we've established there. We've established what the media, the doctored footage, basically, of the kid. That wasn't what it was. We've spoken about the hypocrisy of, 4 black lads can racial abuse everybody, including their own, black people as well. But they're just 4 lads preaching their religion. But a guy standing there with a white guy with a red hat, he's a racist by saying nothing. So we've established that. We've also established that the red hat is not a white hood. It's not racist. It's just a statement for American, superiority, I suppose. But what I was really concerned about, and I just want to mention the guy that wrote an article for CNN, was the sheer audacity of the left-wing media to doctor this footage and to jump all over this and promote it, and for Facebook to promote it. Yet again, as I said, I've got cousins in America, born and bred in America. One side, pro-Trump, and their daughter actually shared that footage. And I commented on that, and I said, look, I'm not going to get involved. It's your country's, we've got our own problems over here in the UK and Ireland. But look, I just want to share this article from The Independent in the UK, which is a left-wing paper that actually deciphers this and actually debunks what you're promoting, because she shared the post of the Indian and this is terrible. These red hats are basically saying "Make America Hate Again," and she was falling all over the Phillips guy, the Native American, and I was like, well, actually, no, look, that's not quite what happened. I could show you some videos, but I'm going to show you a left-wing paper clipping here and just have a read of that, and just completely ignored it.
Yeah,
completely ignored it.
It's easy. What's the expression? It's easy to trick people, but it's very hard to tell people you've been tricked.
What you've seen, yeah. And I'm like, but it's there. And that's why I shared it with the Independent. And I said, this is a left-wing paper. You obviously have, a left-wing ideology, which is fine. That is your right. But these guys are even saying to you, and it's like, just ignore it. Didn't even acknowledge it. Then her ma, it was really funny. Her ma went on and just fucking torrents everybody on it. Oh, you guys sharing this and you're slagging off Trump and blah 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 blah. And I was like, whoa. So I sort of got off that post. But that that to me, gentlemen, I think that's worrying. We have
that's day to day though, Donny.
It is.
People have their own agendas and they don't want to have an honest discussion about their opinions. People, and I think it's very dangerous when people have an opinion. If you get married to an opinion whereby you can't see from the wood from the trees, and it turns into a question of pride as opposed to a question of the actual discussion that you're supposed to be having. If you're having a discussion about something, and like everyone's guilty as a human being, I'm guilty of it as well. You want to be right. You want to win it. You want to come out on top. And when you're corrected on a mistake that you've made in the interpretation of something, it can be a little bit embarrassing. You can feel like a bit like a fool. So it's difficult to own up to it. Not everyone has the modesty or the ability to admit when they're wrong. I don't always do. You definitely don't, Donny, at times.
Fuck off.
The thing is, though, do you think that they just didn't watch the entire video, or they purposely misled people? Because either way, it's totally and utterly unprofessional for a world-famous news company.
I think it's a bit of both.
It's not going to stop, though, Donny and Sean.
No, it won't.
But thing is, Fox News and Breitbart, known affiliates of the Republican Party in America, they do it as well. I think there's more than ever, especially nowadays with the exposure that we have to news, there's an incumbent responsibility on everyone that has a genuine interest in finding the truth. And, the truth is always a relative question, to actually go and look at websites, news companies that you don't agree with, to see what their take or something on it is. Because that's the only genuine way that I feel that you can have the best interpretation of an event or a discussion, is if you incorporate and encompass everyone's opinion to find out what you believe is the most likely thing that happened on a certain day. It's a very tiring thing. It's a very worrying thing that that's what you have to do. I would like to live in a world where I could just simply click on an article, right, that's what happened, and take it as it is, instead of have to go, right, do I have to question that? Why do I have to question that? Why do I have to question the intention behind publishing that article? What's the narrative? What's the objective of this?
It's a bit like getting, if you had, like, let's say in the UK, you had like the Independent on the left hand side and you had the Daily Mail on the right hand side, reading the same article and sort of trawling through and going, right, that's what they say. What did they say? And then somewhere in the, on each different topic and somewhere in the middle, you get the truth. You put the truth together in your head. It is worrying. I mean, I just want to, and what you said there about the not owning up bit, that's a very interesting point, actually, and something I want to bring up in a second. But there was an article by a fellow called Isaac Bailey, and both of you, I shared this to you on WhatsApp, and he wrote an article for CNN, and even he's aware of the video being basically being doctored and used as propaganda. So this is what he said in it. He goes, "Have at it. Choose whichever facts will fuel your outrage. But I won't get involved in that because the debate threatens to obscure a broader, more important truth, that we are living through what feels like a back to the back of the bus moment for many people of colour." Now, that was under the title of "It Matters Because They Wore the Red Hats," something to that effect anyway. Now, for me, gentlemen, that is somebody who's been, as we'd say in Ireland, caught rapid and just sort of going, well, I'm not going to acknowledge that I've, that obviously this is all bollocks, but I'm going to actually find a pseudo topic, a pseudo issue here. You know, I'm going to basically go. What it smacks to me is that he's looked at it and gone, shit. I didn't do my homework. I didn't read through it properly. Fuck. What am I going to do? Right. Lovely. Grand. And he's trying to spin it to save face instead of going, do you know what? I got it wrong. And we need to be so careful that, you know, we need to look at the facts a bit more because this is propaganda. This is what the Nazis use. This is what the communist parties around the world are using. This is what America has done over the years. We need to be so careful of this because if not, we are going to fuel hatred amongst races. That's not actually there. And that, for me, I think is really, really worrying that we live in it, that we have people now, and we spoke about it. You can't just go to a newspaper and go, right, that they're going to tell me the way it actually is. No, they're going to put a spin on it. Social media has put a spin on it, right and left, but predominantly left. That's been shown over the last few months.
Well, I think the world has gone into a vacuum of truth that they'll never be able to escape out of. I think as long as the internet exists, I think the internet is one of the most beautiful creations that human beings have ever devised. If you have a forum whereby anyone can sit behind a keyboard and write whatever the fuck they want when they want, and spew whatever they want, you will always find an audience that wants to believe it. You will always, like, no matter how absurd it is. And I'm one of those, like, the more ridiculous the story is, like, the more I'm likely to read it.
Well, we're going to have plenty of those over the next few weeks here, Luxie, I can tell you that.
Yeah, I know, like, I know we definitely will. But, you know, I often have to remind myself that I'm not American. you know, I'm not American. Why do I get so annoyed by what happens in the country? And the reason is because, and it's happened ever since America became a world superpower after the end of World War One. Whatever happens in America, whether it's the economy or politics, it reverberates around the world. We've our culture in terms of what we're exposed to, especially media, music, television, books, and the fact that our mother tongue is English. We consume so much American content, whether it's media or news, that we feel like we're in their sphere. Our mentality is somehow intertwined with their mentality, and if it happens in America, more likely than not, it's probably going to happen here. If freedom of expression, which, in fairness, that's one thing I would have said about that kid. That kid had a right to stand there. He had a right to disagree with what this man was apparently protesting about, which is completely lost when you're banging a drum in someone's face. That child, under the Second Amendment, I think, the freedom of expression in America, he had every right to stand there and express, and he did, and that's another thing that was completely lost in translation.
Peacefully as well, might I add.
And he was very, you could say that he was very peaceful.
He was peaceful, yeah.
Yeah, there's two ways of interpreting that boy's stance, and it all depends on what your politics are. And the fact that the majority of the major news corporations are owned by left-leaning people, moguls, that have their own agendas, that have their own narrative.
God bless Fox News.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
You know, someone made a great point about Fox News. A good friend of mine. I used to watch Fox News for the crack.
Same here. Bill O'Reilly, baby.
Absolutely. Then Hannity and Combs, where the poor Combs. Let's go back to 2001. Combs, the left-wing guy, and Hannity, the right-wing guy. And they get like a guest on, and you know, if the guy, depending on if he's left or right, depended on the time he got on the show. And Hannity used to shout down Combs because he was the mad right wing nut. Well, I think actually, if that program's made now, the roles will be reversed. In fact, the left-sided guy will be screaming down the right wing guy, afraid to
probably now,
offend anybody. But I think somebody said to me about Fox is that the reason why, not about he said we're fair and balanced. And they're obviously, no, of course not. But my friend turned around and said to me, it was a beautiful analogy. He goes, well, they're not fair and balanced, but they're making the news structure in America fair and balanced, because everywhere is left wing. Now we finally have a right wing station, so now we do have a bit of balance. It's a bit like the two papers, and I thought it was a beautiful analogy and absolutely perfect.
It's ironic, isn't it?
It is ironic, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I mean, just to finish up here, let's talk about Mr. Phillips. Because, you know, we hear he's a Vietnam War veteran and a hero and all that good stuff. Sean, you shared something with me this morning. He wasn't even in Vietnam, was he?
Well, it was kind of a tricky way of how he phrased that. He said he was a I think he said a Vietnam Times vet, right? Now, CNN took that as Vietnam vet, as in he was a veteran of the Vietnam War.
Right.
But he was in the army, kind of, during Vietnam, at the time of Vietnam, but he was never deployed to Vietnam. So to call yourself a veteran of Vietnam, of the Vietnam War, is you kind of have to be in Vietnam and have lived through that. He was a refrigerator mechanic in like California or something during the Vietnam War, but he would say, "Well, I said I'm a Vietnam Times vet." So, but again, that didn't stop anyone else saying, "Oh, this brave Vietnam vet was harassed by this smirking MAGA kid."
Yeah. There you go. I mean, there's just more spin, and I think you're right, Luxie. It isn't going away.
No, it won't. Never will.
And as long as that doesn't go away, we're not going to go away either. Okay, well, we'll leave it there, lads. Thank you very much for your contribution, and hopefully you listening at home, you enjoyed it very much as we enjoyed talking about it. And please join us again next time on Get Up the Yard.
Get up the yard.